Well, hello, family. This is Phil. Um, Phil Gris couldn't make it today, so I thought I'd just show up for a minute and tell you that I love you. Um, just thought I'd talk a little bit about what is health and what really makes us sick. So I had a little post on Facebook the other day. Some of you have seen it, and it was well shared. So I'm just going to read that. So I find it really interesting how the government, industry, medical industries complexes like to blame an invisible cause that we have no control over. And we've seen that they've been doing this for a long time. And if you look into history, you can see this. And then they offer us solutions that are really anti-life. The real issue, however, is staring us in the face. And the solutions do not, will never, come from those profit industries, the cause. The solutions come from our individual sovereignty and alignment with nature, God's divine, infinite natural wisdom. The thing is, there is never just one thing out there floating in the air. The body is an incredibly resilient and has powerful detoxification pathways. However, when you bombard the body with insults every day from every angle, it would eventually fail. People do not get sick out of nowhere. People often like to say, we're living longer, but compared to what? Compared to times when living conditions were terrible and wars were rampant. That brings up the point of during this, people often go, well, look at the Spanish flu of 1918. And when you actually dig into the details of the Spanish flu, a lot of the soldiers that were in war were often given a lot of experimental vaccines that had really high amounts of heavy metals. They were also weakened by being in toxic conditions in the trenches. And they were also doing experimentations at the time with chemical warfare with chlorine and mustard gas, which is very damaging to the lungs. Also at the time, they were really ramping up industry for the military industrial complex, producing more and more machines, experiments with gunpowder, and different, techniques for producing the machinery and a lot of heavy metals that were coming off of those things. So when you really look at the picture, what we often see, in my opinion, is the virus is a distraction. It's a distraction when we get people to look the other way. So if you look at all pandemics, of the 20th century, what we see is there's a distraction. So we often, the industry or the medical or the media put out that, oh, it's this virus that's causing this illness. But when you actually look at the history and look at what's really going on, what we see is there's usually some sort of toxic influence that is affecting the people. We look at the smallpox epidemic, for example, or polio. Polio is a better example. And during the time of polio, what was happening was a lot of DDT was being sprayed everywhere. DDT is good for me. And that was actually causing paralysis in people. And that was, but that was blamed on a virus. It's like a distraction. It's like, look over here, but don't look at what is actually going on. So, that's kind of what I say, so compared to, when we say we're living longer, we're actually not living healthier. We're seeing rampant disease in children, in adults. We're seeing increases in cancer, heart disease. And when you look at like the top leading causes of death, like we don't really have natural death anymore. We have, leading cause of disease or death is cardiovascular disease, then cancer. Then interestingly, right at the top, we got respiratory disease and lower respiratory infections. So again, we see that in that top 5, we've got, conditions of the lungs around the world, and, in my opinion, that's due to pollution and due to stresses on the body. Again, in the top 10, we've got dementia, which, in my opinion, is connected to heavy metals, digestive diseases, diarrheal diseases, diabetes, liver disease, kidney disease. When we properly take care of this human body, we have a potential to live healthy and disease-free for our entire lives. Yes, we all die eventually. We're not bulletproof. And it seems in this time, industry wants to believe, that, we're not mortal, wants to forget that, people die. People die of diseases um, due to ill health. But these diseases don't just happen to the human being. They have a cause, and there is a solution. And it's going to take us changing our ways. It's going to take us returning back to nature and back to creating Eden, on earth once again. Let's just kind of go over some of these causes of what really makes us sick. We've got agrochemicals, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. I kind of find it interesting that, people look at something like they're okay with like Roundup, or Roundup weed killer being sprayed all around their houses, in their parks, like just, people driving there on, their little trucks. And I see it all the time. They're spraying just mass amounts of this herbicide that have now been shown, to cause cancer. It really messes up the microbiome because it disrupts what's known as the shikimate pathway, which affects the microorganisms within the system. So we know that that's a problem. So that's like an invisible thing that we're not scared of, but we're scared of this virus. But we're not scared of, the amount of chemicals that are being sprayed all around us all the time. And that, in my opinion, that's got to stop. We got to take care of that. Then we look at the overuse of antibiotics. And I'm not denying that in times, in infections, antibiotics are useful, but it's the overprescription of those that destroys the natural microbiome within the body. We also look at the excessive use of petrochemical products, plastics, carpets with off-gassing of formaldehyde, the different paints that are used. Then we look at the overprescription of psychiatric drugs, which is causing massive brain imbalances instead of looking, how do we create a healthy brain? We look at chemically treated synthetic clothing. We're looking at isolated sugars, junk food, GMOs, factory farm, deep fried, toxic chemicals, and these foods that are in these junk food restaurants that, have remained open during this time. I heard that in Mexico, they're actually looking at reducing the amount of junk foods that kids are getting, which is fantastic. But the high heat products, the high heat carcinogenic byproducts of deep fried junk food, restaurant food is causing problems, is causing health problems. And it's something we need to look at and address and minimize in our society. Then we're looking at processed foods and these lifeless fake foods often put out as a solution. Hey, look, let's make fake meats and fake cheeses. And these things are just very distorted from nature and are in no way a health food. And then we've got foods that are made in a factory and with synthetic flavors and colors, which are known as excitotoxins. It's a great book called Excitotoxins by Russell Blaylock that's really interesting. Then we have the EMF pollution. And a lot of people say, well, one little bit of EMF is not bad. Like, it's only a cell phone. But it's what the challenge is really the saturation point that we're in. It's not just one cell phone. It's your cell phone plus the Wi-Fi in your house, plus the neighbor's Wi-Fi, plus now, that the phone company, at least here, is like the phone company's now putting out a Wi-Fi. I don't know where it's coming from. Plus cell phone towers, plus the smart TV, plus the smart meters on your house. It's that accumulation of all of those things. And knowing that we're an electrical being, that we're knowing that our heart is electrical, that we can restart or stop the heart with an electrical pulse, that we are electrical. So these things are affecting us. While we can't see them, they are having an effect. I mean, if we can get on a phone and you can talk to somebody like that on the other side of the world, that frequency, that is having an effect on the human body. Then, we're seeing a lot of this in 2020 is the isolation, lack of human connection, touch, avoiding other people, this fear that healthy people are spreading disease and causing people to be unhealthy. We also have a lack of nature. A lot of people are spending more and more times indoors and not getting outdoors and walking in nature, connecting with the trees, breathing fresh air. It really blows me away that I see people, way out on the trail, wearing a mask. And it's just like, I get like maybe it can be useful in certain situations, but out on the trail, fresh air. We want to get that fresh air into our lungs. And at the same time, that spiritual connection, a connection, through meditation and all of those things. We also see an excess of chronic stress, especially this year. People are very stressed. The media, the fear, people are already stressed, and now we're extra stressed with lockdowns and losing businesses. We create an excess of stress hormones within the human body. And it just accumulates, and it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped all year. And that stress can lead to illness, can lead to weakening of the immune system, which is very traumatic. This chronic stress can also come from excessive watching of violent and traumatic video games and movies, because it creates the same effect. The body doesn't really know the difference between, something you see on TV or a movie and something in real life. Like, the body will react in the same way. You watch a movie and you start crying, or you watch a scary movie and you get all tense. That same thing, and that's going into the body. We also look at the medical industry, pharmaceutical, petrochemical based pharmaceutical synthetic products, which really aren't designed to cure disease. They're designed to suppress symptoms. That's basically it. So what do you think happens if you suppress symptoms? If you push it down, it's going to get deeper into the body and cause further issues later on in life. It's like sweeping the dust under the rug. If you keep doing it, eventually the rug's going to start sticking up and you're going to start having problems. Those things get buried deep into the body. And what does the body do? It encapsulates them, creates tumors, things like that. So we're kind of burying those. So we want to listen to those symptoms. Those symptoms are nature's way of telling us, reminding us. It's like, hey, there's something wrong here. Listen to the body, listen to that symptom, listen to what's going on. We also have a huge amount of problems with like chemicals used in the dental industry. Mercury fillings, which I think I use less. Finally, there's a wake up there. But even some of the excessive use of fluoride, which is very damaging to the brain chemistry. And then, pretty much every pharmaceutical drug has a big list of effects or side effects, which are detrimental, so it's not really something that's going to bring about health. And then we've also got the overuse of, surgeries, invasive surgeries into the body. We also look at nutritional deficiencies. In our Western world today, we're not eating that well. I talked about junk food, isolated sugars, processed foods. Those foods are deficient in healthy vitamins and minerals. So we become depleted, and eventually that, leads to ill health. We're also exposing ourselves to excessive amount of household chemicals, detergents, air fresheners, cosmetics, fragrances. All of these things are stimulants to the body. They are toxins in the body. And the body has to go, what do I do with this? The liver has to deal with it. The kidneys have to deal with it. So that's household chemicals. Poor breathing. The natural way to breathe is, through the nose, slowly and gently. But in our life, we kind of end up breathing through the mouth. And what I've noticed is, if you look at the way people are wearing these masks, it's like kind of tight over the nose, and it's kind of pushing people to breathe through their mouth, which further creates an imbalance in the CO2 and the oxygen intake, outtake. So, even if you're wearing a mask, it's really important to really focus on the nose, slow, steady, nasal breathing. And I highly recommend Oxygen Advantage book to learn more about healthy breathing. We're also looking at heavy metals, and different heavy metals coming from industry, from pollution, from industrial exhausts, and also from, heavy metals or the food. There's so much pollution in our environment that's got into our soils, and that pollution, those heavy metals, have come from industry extracting those from the earth. And again, they accumulate in the body and cause all sorts of problems. Air pollution, industrial pollution, combustion machine, geoengineering, um, spraying chemicals into the air to, minimize the amount of sun, to combat global warming. So tap water, chlorine, fluoride, toxins that are in that water, again, causing imbalances in the body. Emotional stress. People are under a lot of emotional stress this year. Talked about that already with chronic stress, worry, obsession, trauma. And then we come down to vaccines, heavy metals, allergens, synthetic agents. We're seeing a huge amount of people reacting to the new vaccine because of the polyethylene glycol, an isolated chemical that is causing reactions in people. Excessive alcohol and smoking. Probably in the past, some sacred tobacco or some, fermented aged beverage was, somewhat good. But today we have GMO mass produced chemicalized products. The tobacco is highly chemicalized, highly processed. The beer is mass produced, not so good for the body. Dehydration. People are not drinking the right quality water, excess coffee, excess soda, and poor diet. And then we come down to sedentary lifestyle. And especially again, this year, people have restricted themselves to indoors. And there's a lot more time spent on digital expressions, more time watching TV, and that is inputting into the body, more time on Zoom, excess sitting, and then so that leads to a lack of exercise, lack of getting outside, lack of getting into nature. So, kind of the bottom line here is the terrain is everything. So it's time to stop assaulting the terrain, and it will support outstanding health. Remove the cause of the disease to create health. And these symptoms that we're obsessed with are not the cause of the disease. The cause of the disease, what makes us sick, is kind of what I went over today. So that's that's what I want to say today. And thanks for joining me on the Phil and Phil show. I love you. I bless you with health and vibrancy, love and joy.